Hi, Dave. Got your controller all built. I'm going to run through this with you real quick, and hopefully this will help you out assembling everything. First thing you got here, down here, these two terminals right here, that's your 120 in. So you have L1, which is your hot from your panel or your breaker, and this is your neutral. Okay, this is where your hot, your black wire, and your white wire goes. Your ground wire gets attached down here to one of these lugs. Okay, so that's your 120 in. Now your 12 volt DC is right here. Okay, and it's the terminal marked red and black. It's right next to the L1 and neutral. That's where you're going to hook your constant 12 volts. That'll make the 12 volt part of the system work. Now you can either hook that to a battery bank, or you can hook it to a basically a transformer. And basically what it does is that transformer will put out 120 volts and take it down to 12 volts. I recommend using a battery bank because if the grid goes down, your 12 volt readings will still read. Okay, if the grid does go down, your dump load controller on your inverter will protect your turbine. All right, so you got a good system for protection there. So you hook up your 120, you hook up your 12 volt. The next step, what you want to do is you want to hook up your wind turbine. And there's your rectifier. So all three wires from the PMA go here, 1, 2, 3. And your second wind turbine gets tied in over here, 1, 2, 3. All right, these terminals here. And that's your wild AC coming in. Everything else is pre-wired. So now that you have all that hooked up, you then want to come over here. And this is your kilowatt meter, which I have an inverter plugged into. And this plug here, this is for your wind meter. All right, that's what's going to change the relays from inverters, small inverters to big inverters. So this already has its own plug incorporated in, and you have another socket down here. So you can basically put a 3-way plug in here, or 4-way plug, or 6-way, and plug all your inverters in. And then this will give you your overall watts. All right. Down here you have an on-off switch with a fuse. This is for your 120. So you turn the switch on, and your kilowatt meter should come on. Okay? Shut it off. Shuts off the AC power to the system. All right, and the inverter's off too. So we turn the switch on. Now the inverter's on. Okay, so that shuts off your AC power to the system. Okay, up here in your wind switch, you have these dip switches right there. They are right here. Get my finger here. They're right here, and they're 1 through 8. And they're increments of 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40 miles an hour. So every time you put a dip switch up, you go up an increment of 5 miles an hour. Right now it's set for 5 miles an hour to trip the relays, to switch inverters. Okay, there's one relay for one turbine. There's one relay for another turbine. All right. So basically what I do is I keep it on number 2. So you flip up number 2, put number 1 down, and flip up number 2. So every time you flip one up, you'll go up in wind speed. 10 miles an hour seems to be a good switching point for the turbines. All right, so try to keep it at 2. See how you like it there. Now what you want to do is for your little inverter, you want to take the positive lead of the inverter and hook it to this terminal right here. Off the relay. Let me get this out of the way. All right, you have that relay there. There's your positive. Let me back up. There's your positive going down and out to your inverter. Your 250, your little inverter. Okay, the negative gets put on the negative bar. And you repeat that same process over on these 2 bars here. This is for the second turbine. Positive goes to the smaller inverter. Negative goes to the smaller inverter. Now for the bigger inverter, you do the same thing. I'm sorry, positive for the smaller inverter goes up to this relay here. All right, so the smaller inverters, the positive gets connected to this relay and to that relay per turbine. So if this is turbine number 1, its smaller inverter positive will get connected to that relay. Turbine number 2, its positive on the smaller inverter will get connected to this relay. All right, and then negative goes here for this turbine's inverter, and negative goes here for this turbine's inverter. Now, your bigger inverter gets put straight on the bus bars. So if you have a 522 to 60, that's going to get put here for the positive. And again, the negative will go here for the bigger inverter, okay? Because we're not switching the bigger inverter. We're only shutting off the smaller inverter at a certain wind speed so that we can run the turbines at higher RPM, higher voltage to get more power out of it. That's the whole purpose of this. All right, so you repeat the same process over here. The 500, 22 to 60, or 1,000 watt, whatever you're using, the positive will go on this bus bar, and the negative will go on this bus bar. So you actually have two negatives on here. One for the smaller inverter, one for the bigger inverter. The bigger inverter positive goes here. The smaller inverter positive goes there. Okay? Now what happens here is when we hit 10 miles an hour, these relays will switch off. So let me bang. I have a little wind meter set up here. All right, so if I hit this, these relays are going to go off. You see the red lights on them. It does have a delay. All right? Now the wind speed drops back down. They'll kick back on. Okay, so that's your little inverter kicking on and off. So anything above 10 miles an hour, that inverter is off now, and we're into the bigger inverters. When the wind speed drops, the inverters will kick back on again on the lower wind speed. Now, if we shut the door here, let me put this down a minute. I do have an inverter hooked up, okay? And the wiring for this, I'll give you a diagram on how to wire this because you are going to have to take the wiring from this wind cup system and put it up on the turbine. I think there's 50 feet of cable here. You can splice this cable. It's no big deal. And it gets wired in this box here. Okay? And that wind cups actually get wired right there on that terminal. There's two terminals there, Sam. Nothing on the bottom terminal. So this is where your wind cups go. This is where your 12 volt goes. And this is where your meter goes, your wind meter. All right? So I'm going to put this down a minute. These leads here. All right, you have to take these leads off when you want to get the door open all the way because they're not long enough. They won't reach the door. As you can see, they're a little short. So I want to put the camera down here a minute. Give me a second. Stay with me, and I'm going to snap in your leads. I'm going to show you the front. And they're real easy to snap in. You'll see they only go in one way. But the door only opens about a third of the way because the leads are so small. Okay. So as you can see, the door opens about that far. So you got to get in there and pop them leads off. You take these leads and just wiggle and grab the lead and it comes off. All right, there's little tabs on the bottom that lines up. So we'll just put it back in. All right, push in, and it's in. All right. Now we'll come out to the front of the system. This is the front. All right, and here's your meters. All right, there's your wind speed. On the left would be your first turbine's information over here. And on the right would be your second turbine's information. And you simply push this button here. That's watts. That's amps. That's cumulative time, and it tells you right on there your amp hours. All right. There's time. There's volts. So it'll read double voltage. You can put the power up here if you want. It does the same thing up here. Okay. And I usually keep the volts up top. And this is DC, by the way. Whoops. So we got, let's see, volts up there. And we got power down here. Okay? And same with this guy over here. Whoops. That's your second turbine there. All right? And there's your wind speed. And if we spin these wind cups up here, here you go. Okay? So it's reading. And this here, you can set your time. There's directions with this, how to work this, but there's average wind speed, max wind speed. So I usually hold that in and clear out to 0. So you'll know what max wind speed is, even if you're not home. So you'll be able to record some data. Now, these don't hold the highest watts or anything. And these are both for DC, not AC. The AC reading would be over here on the watt meter. Now, eBay does sell a different watt meter that will tell you the highest watts you made. I can send you a link to that if you want to do that. I'm probably going to start using them meters. It's a good meter. The ones we were using before didn't work too well, so that's why I didn't use them. All right. And again, here's this is another AC plug. This is for your wind meter. This is the power going to the wind meter. This is another 12-volt transformer. It's already included with the system, so you don't have to worry about that. If you want to take these wires and hook them to a battery, you can do that as well inside. All right, wherever this wire goes hooked up to the board, the wind switchboard, you can take these wires off and put a positive and negative to the board coming off your battery bank as well. And you can have a whole thing run off 12 volt off the battery bank. But you just got to make sure you got positive and negatives. You got to read the board. If you mess them up, you'll blow the board up. So you got to be careful of that. Because once this goes down, if the grid goes down, the wind switch isn't going to switch anymore. All right, which really doesn't matter anyway, because the inverter is really going to, you're going to put your dump load on your inverters right here. That's where your dump load goes, and this is where your positive and negative go. All right, so if this was a little inverter, this would be on the relay, and this would be on the negative bar. If this was your bigger inverter, this would be on your positive bus bar, and this would be on your negative bus bar. Okay, and over here you have DC breakers. Okay, this shuts off the DC power coming in from the wind turbine, and it's pretty much, there's 60 amp breakers. You only have 400 watt turbines, so 400 watts at 30 volts is not that many amps. So I actually oversize these breakers because you don't want them tripping all the time. Obviously, your stuff won't work. So they're basically a redundancy system. Okay, and this system can be wired for multiple things, Dave. You can do a lot with this thing. You can hook batteries to it. You can do a bunch of stuff. But this is basically set up for you for grid tie using these type of inverters. All right, and I'm also going to include you a bunch of these lugs here. We get a good view of them. All right, they're rated for copper and aluminum. I gave you 8 of them. So you can just screw them right on your inverter. I already drill them out for you and pop them on there. All right, they're real nice for attaching stuff. I gave you more for your dump loads too. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'll be back. I'm going to hook up a turbine. I got a little wind blue PMA over here. And I'll hook that up and run that for you and show you how quick these meters register. Now, if you see on here, there's a little bit of residual voltage. That's because they don't have a ground hooked up to the system. I just have a little cord, makeshift cord here, and I put a plug on the end. So I could get AC power to show you how this works. All right? But it's a great system. You're going to love this thing. And there's holes in the back of this, too. You can drill more if you want. But see, they just popped off. No big deal. These leads, you got to remember to take these leads off when you open up the door. But they do pop out on their own, but they just did. But there are holes. You see in the back of there, there's holes. All right. So I'll be back in a minute with the PMA.